and Ms. Hope Bess Wilson, who will also be joining us. It is the 21st of January, 2021. We are here as part of the negotiations surrounding the UNF-UFF collective bargaining agreement. This meeting follows from the requirements of Article 8.3C of the CBA. I know that's not up on the screen. Let me try and share my screen and see if that. Marianne, if you'll allow me to share that screen, I'll put that provision up. And we can talk a little bit about that. All right, here we go. So again, we're here based upon the requirements of Article 8.3C of the CBA, which provides that if any rule, policy, or resolution proposed by the university administration has a direct and substantial impact on wages, hours, or terms or conditions of employment, the university administration shall, upon UFF's request, engage in collective bargaining with respect to the impact of the change prior to implementing. With that, I'd like to welcome the UNF BOT team and its members. Mike, do you want to handle introductions for your group?
Sure. I'm Mike Banamore, and I'm serving in the capacity as Chief Negotiator for the University of North Florida Board of Trustees. I'm going to let my team individually introduce themselves since we have some new members on your team, and rather than just tick off everyone's name, we'll go through our team and let them introduce themselves and describe their role at the university. Marianne, why don't you start off?
Marianne Jaffe, and I work in the Provost's Office in Academic Affairs.
I'm David Jager. I'm the chair of the Department of Accounting and Finance in the Cotton College of Business.
I'm Justin Sorrell in the Office of the General Counsel.
Diane Yendel-Hoppe, Dean of the College of Education and Human Services.
Carrie Geth, Director of Human Resources.
John Kander, I'm the Associate VP for Research, Dean of the Graduate School, and for the moment, Interim Associate Provost of something or another.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think that's everybody on our team.
All right, and congratulations, John, and welcome, everyone. All right, so in terms of kind of catching up where we were left off last time, let me describe a little backdrop here in terms of the events that are leading today's discussion. You can see on the screen there, I think most of us are aware that back in March of 2020, the 11th, the State University and UNF transitioned and moved to remote instruction and work. The two bargaining teams immediately began to work on agreements to attempt to mitigate the decisions associated with that move. We reached agreement in April 10th regarding a variety of different aspects. Again, on 29th of June, second MOU. And then again in September on the third MOU. These MOUs were ratified by the faculty in September and in October by the Board of Trustees. Obviously, we have moved into a new semester, and the hope on both sides of the table has been to move some of the provisions that we reached agreement on into the continuing exigency of the pandemic as we move into the spring semester. And so I've highlighted some of the areas there that we are continuing to talk about. And from there, the two areas of focus today, as Marianne kind of pointed out, is that at 3 o'clock, Mr. Bob Greenlaw, who's the UNF COVID-19 Task Force Coordinator, is actually lead point person in coordinating the university's response to the pandemic, will join us and talk about things that are going on in the university in response to kind of the conditions and events that we're seeing now on the ground. And so we'll reserve discussion of what we have in the past talked about in terms of the events on the ground and the number of cases, things like that. In addition, our focus today is, the hope is to continue to talk about the proposals on research, teaching, and service impacts. I've listed the dates there. There are two major proposals, one on each side of the table, that are outstanding. One from UFF on December 8th, and another one on the 13th of January that was provided as an update to the BOT's proposal of the 11th of December. And I should correct that 113 is actually 2021. So Mike, if you'll permit us, we'd like to talk about some of the differences between the proposals and see if we can't work through these differences in an effort to reach agreement on a fourth MOU.
It sounds like a good idea.
All right. So let me do this. Let me toggle on down to the slides that are actually the ones of our focus today. And the first area of interest is, and what I've tried to do here is, given our time, is get right to the differences between the two outstanding proposals. So one of the major differences between the proposals is the inclusion of what's called the chair's statement. This was a final draft issued on the November 6th on the Council of Chairs that describes the impacts in extensive way regarding, from the chair's perspective, the council chair's perspective, the impacts on teaching, research, and service. And this was intended to be added to the annual evaluations and P&T evaluations for the years of the exigency of the pandemic. We proposed in our first proposal that the Council of Chairs statement be attached to each faculty member's annual evaluation. And we noted that that was missing in your most recent proposal. So of course we wanted to talk about that. I've included the actual chair statement here. And since this was actually described and drafted in November, we included it because of its substance and also the desire of the chairs to include it. Is there a reason, Mike, that that's not being included on your side of the table?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons why. First, to put this statement into some kind of context, we have been negotiating with the UFF, and we've had numerous productive conversations with your team, Greg, about how to deal with the evaluation process and how to notice for people who might be looking at the evaluation in the future that the evaluation was made in this pandemic. So this is nice language, but it's not our language. We think it goes into too much detail for our purposes. So we do not have that in our section 3 of the MOU, which has to do with currently that the faculty may watermark what they submit. Now, what are we willing to accept in terms of having some language appended to the annual evaluation? So that's the evaluation letter that's given by the evaluator to the evaluated faculty member, and we're willing to put some notice on that document. What we would suggest is that we have a notice on the document that is similar to the notice that will be added to the ISQ results in the MOU proposal at paragraph 2. So we would suggest something like the evaluation for academic year 2020-21 may have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're willing to append that, but not all of this.
Yeah, so Mike, and we can get to that COVID statement, which is, another part of our conversation, but I really don't, I'd like to delve in here. I mean, As you know, the UNF Council of Chairs is an important governing body here at UNF. They represent all of the chairs. These are the frontline members of the administration that interact with faculty on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones who are actually seeing what's going on in terms of these impacts. And, you know, they recognized in early November that this was an issue, and they drafted this statement in good faith. And it does a great job, I think, of characterizing kind of some of our conversations, but it does it in a way that's different from merely a label that says may have impacted. Let's take a look at it. I'm interested to see from your team, what is it about this statement that you disagree with? For example, I'll just highlight for a moment here the first sentence. It should be recognized that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the academic community, particularly in higher education. Now, I think, I don't think any of us here disagree, at least on this side of the table. Is there anybody on your side of the table that disagrees with that statement?
Well, it's, you know, we appreciate that the chairs have come to this statement, but it's not a statement that we had a part of working through. And so the way that we view it, Greg, is that the United Faculty of Florida came to us and requested impact bargaining on a number of issues, including the evaluation. And the thought that some kind of notice or statement would appear by watermark or addition by language to the evaluation materials submitted by the faculty member, and what we give as the evaluator. We were not a part of this process, and so it's not a matter of going through it line by line and coming to a thought of whether we agree or disagree. We're not willing to put this statement on our evaluations that we provide to you. We are willing to put some kind of recognition that the evaluations may have been impacted, but we're not going to get into all of this.
Yeah, Mike,
we think it's too detailed, and we think it, I think it's going to hold up our process, because even if we were to agree with some of the statements made here, we might say it differently. So I think we're willing to, we gave the UFF a draft MOU for your consideration on the 13th. We're willing to amend and add to that document to allow for some kind of notice on the actual evaluation letter that's provided to the faculty, but not this document, not this statement.
Yeah, Mike, and you're reiterating your position, and I appreciate that. I think, as I take it, that you've indicated here you've not been a part of this statement, but the reality is you've had this statement over a month, and the administration has seen this statement for over 2 months. And to your point that it's too much detail, I guess I'd have to have you explain that. How could it be too much detail to describe, from the chair's perspective, the impact of the pandemic? I mean, I thought our shared principle here was to protect faculty and mitigate the impacts of the issues that have been prompted through the pandemic, such as moving to remote learning, the fact that faculty don't have funding to do research that they normally would have, the fact that faculty are not able to engage in the types of service activities they normally would. I guess I don't understand. First of all, I think you have been a part of it, because we understand that this has been in the administration's hands for quite some time, and you're representing the administration today here. And number two is, how can too much detail be too much? Explain, please. I'm all ears.
Well, we as a team and as administration may not agree with every representation in this statement or we may not express ourselves in the way that this has been expressed. The Council of Chairs is certainly a part of the university community, and they have their right to articulate this statement. It doesn't mean that we automatically accept it and adopt it in our collective bargaining. We think this goes into much greater detail than we're comfortable with. I don't know how else to say that to you. We're willing to put a notice on the evaluation if that's something you want to agree to. If not, then we don't have an agreement.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd like to hear from your team. I mean, what is it that is I mean, obviously you have a disagreement internal to the administration. You as a bargaining team are disagreeing with the Council of Chairs as to either the characterization of the impacts or the reality of the impacts. I'd really like to find out what that is. I mean, it seems as though, I mean, we've read this multiple times and we have thought that pretty much all of it you had already agreed to in our discussions. We went back to the video and there's really not a lot here. Can you, I mean, for my edification, can you pick out one area, one sentence, one portion of a sentence that you don't agree with?
I don't want
As a
to-
factual matter.
Yeah, I don't want to take issue with the chair's statement and criticize it. I respect their right to make this statement, but they do not conduct collective bargaining with the United Faculty of Florida. And their statement is not binding on the collective bargaining process. For example, if this statement said something other than what it says and you disagreed with it, I wouldn't be able to say to you, well, we're not going to talk about what goes into our memorandum of understanding because we have a statement by the chairs. So
Yeah.
I don't expect you to,
Well, just,
Robert, I don't expect you to accept whatever comes out of the Council of Chairs. And I don't think you can expect our team to. So
well,
I'm not going to get into
Mike, to that
some
point,
kind of criticism of this statement.
well, to
I'm
that
just telling
point-
you that we're not comfortable in adding it to the evaluation document.
Yeah, well, the two reasons you've provided is that you weren't a part of it, and I think we've determined that you were.
I was not a part.
You
And
had
the
it for 2
bargaining team was
months.
not a part of the development of this language, no. We're
Right.
not a part of it.
Well, how
Just
would
because we
you?
received this language doesn't mean it is our position. It is not, actually never been our position. So, and you and I, Greg, and our teams do the collective bargaining. You don't bargain with the chairs.
Well, what we're asking you to do through this bargaining is to accept the statements of the chair. And of course, you're not doing that, or you're objecting to it. So in good faith, I really appreciate it if you tell me what portions of this you disagree with so that we can reach some type of an agreement. I mean, these are just stated facts. I mean, do you disagree with the first sentence? I mean, take me to a part, or anyone of your team, take me to a part that we can tell the faculty after this meeting that you disagree with, or should we just tell them that you disagree with all of this? Because
We're not going to get into the critique of the chair's statement.
Well, we
We
kind of
think
are.
we think
rejecting it.
it's a nice and a good statement. We're not adopting it for the purposes of this collective bargaining.
And so we seem to be a little bit of an impasse because we think this is vitally important to the faculty. And we think it's vitally important that the chairs be heard. We think it's vitally important that we think everything here is a true statement. And we think, in fact, that the lack of inclusion will not sufficiently protect the faculty. I mean, let's do this. Let's continue on, and I'll point out some other areas of concern that we have. I don't see us reaching an agreement if we can't come to some terms on this statement. And of course, that would force us to have to share with the faculty that this statement was rejected by the bargaining team. I'm sure they're not going to be happy with that, and I'm not sure how the Council of Chairs are going to react to that. But let's reserve for a moment.
Well, I would like to point this out.
Sure.
that to be clear, what we are rejecting is your proposal that this statement be added to our annual evaluation document.
Mike,
We are
let me
not-
correct
we are
you.
we're not asking that this statement be retracted or changed. It is what it is, and that what it is a statement by the Council of Chairs. I think
Mike.
I've said that I respect their right to make this statement, and we respect the statement. I
Mike,
just want to be clear about that. But we
Yeah,
are
but let's-
not going to put in an MOU that this is going to be included into the language of our evaluation.
I just want to correct the record, Mike, because it is not only our position that this should be included in the MOU as being added to the evaluations and the P&T evaluations. That's actually the proposal of the Council of Chairs. So we're not doing anything more than what the Council of Chairs does. In fact, if you read closely at the bottom there, I've included the language that they provided. This is proposed by the UNF Council of Chairs to be, quote, added to annual evaluations and PT evaluations for this year to indicate the COVID effects in teaching, research, and service for faculty. So in fact, Mike, you are disagreeing with the proposal of the Council of Chairs. It's not our position to add it. That is the position of the Council of Chairs. Should you not add it to the P&T evaluations and the annual evaluations, you are disagreeing with the Council of Chairs proposal.
I think I'm going to try to change the direction of question just slightly for the time being. Hi. So Mike, you mentioned earlier that you were willing to append some sort of statement to the evaluations. How much, when you sort of supposed out loud, it was somewhat generic. Would the university be willing to flesh out that sort of statement that you appended to it a bit more?
Well, we want the statement to be direct. We want the statement to be succinct. We want the statement to be something that we're not going to have any kind of administrative slippage, so that it doesn't appear in an evaluation. So we want to keep it somewhat straightforward, but we're certainly willing to consider suggestions of a statement other than the one that I articulated. And the one that I articulated, we just thought made sense because it was consistent with the statement made with the ISQs.
Certainly, but the evaluations probably might be, both parties would be well served by a bit more detail than that, given, the ISQs have a limited number of factors that impact them. The evaluations are admittedly a more complex synthesis of information. So so again, I guess we loop back to Greg's point, which is let's assume for the sake of argument that we would entertain that what both parties actually care about in good faith is the content of any statement, regardless of who wrote it, right? I guess where we're going with that is it would help us more if we were to flesh out such a statement, if we understood what you're comfortable with and what you're not. I'm particularly interested in what you said in terms of administrative slippage. What do you mean by that term?
The simpler the statement and the more succinct the statement, that will allow us to incorporate onto the document, the template of what the evaluation is, because my understanding is that the evaluation document that's given to the faculty member might vary from evaluator to evaluator. So we want to have some consistency across the.
I guess.
But that was sort of the beauty of the chair's statement, wasn't it?
Yeah. Any statement we agree to,
Yeah.
Mike, would be applied consistently. So I'm
Yeah.
not capturing
We're
that
not
argument.
following.
in terms of
Yeah.
slippage.
We just think it's a long statement. We're
think-
thinking about something more along the way of a notice statement, so that someone who would look at this evaluation this year or future years would be put on notice that it was an evaluation given in this environment. But Emily, if you wanted to give us language broader than what we're putting on the ISQ, because you think that's appropriate, we'll certainly consider it.
Well, I mean, the team is agnostic on that point. We would need to caucus about that. But before I or anyone tries to draft it, we do need a clearer sense of where the objections are. Where I hear you saying is that it's too long, there's too much detail, and something might get lost in translation because it's going to everybody. Have I accurately reflected what you've said to me?
Right, and
Yeah.
I guess our position also is that there is going to be some evaluations
Mhm.
that will capture performance
Right.
that has been truly impacted by this COVID pandemic. There's going to be some evaluations that will capture performance that, good or bad, was not impacted by COVID. And that is going to happen naturally in any given year. There's going to be some faculty members in any given year, in any circumstance, that will engage in performance behaviors that will require some evaluative notice. And so I don't think this statement recognizes that.
Mike, can I
That's kind
jump in
of,
here?
that's something that we want to be able to protect. We want to be able to protect that. If a faculty member has done an excellent job in spite of the COVID, that should be recognized in their evaluation. If somebody does a poor job, COVID or not, that should be recognized too.
I hear you, Mike, but it sounds a bit gobbledygook to me because the statement speaks to that. It says, for example, in the second line, the disruption in normal activities has impacted to some varying degree the majority of faculty. Those are very flexible things. It's not, plus if you go on, the statement is not saying that it's an either or. It's saying may have, it's got all of those accoutrements in it. So I think that's a little bit of a red herring. I think the slippage argument, I think I'm hearing you're saying that if this statement were included, that you're saying you think that a chair would choose not to include it, even though it would be required under an MOU that they included. Because it's not saying that they have to, the only requirement of this statement is that it be inserted in and attached to the evaluation. It's not saying that you have to do something after that. All we're asking for is to take and slap a copy of it on the back of the annual evaluation.
Yeah.
What the heck's wrong with that?
We think a statement, a simple notice statement on the evaluation document itself, as opposed to an attachment statement, would be easier to administer, yes.
Okay.
And how's that? When you say easier to administer, are you saying that there's some challenge administratively and managerially from a cost standpoint or from an effort standpoint to staple this on the end of an evaluation
We
versus
think,
a statement?
Yeah, we do. We think, for example, this document as an attachment could be separated from the rest of the evaluation. We think that this document as an attachment might not be added because of administrative oversight. We think if we have a simple statement incorporated into the document itself, and by that I mean we propose a sentence, a notice sentence. We think it does the job, and we think it's going to be more consistently implemented. Yes, and it's not going to get separated from the document in the future.
Kind of like the assignment of activities get separated each year, that kind of thing.
I don't.
Yeah, well, let's move on, Mike. We hear you. I'm surprised and I'm a bit extremely, well, more than a bit, I'm extremely disappointed. But let's move on to some of these other areas because there are some similar challenges that we want to get on the table and we're just running out of time. So with that, let me move to the next area, which deals with the COVID statement. And actually it's probably an extension of the conversation we just had. So the UFF's proposal was that each page of a faculty member's annual evaluation portfolio, or in the case of the library and other areas, their annual reported activities, and that each page of a faculty member's annual evaluation from the department, this would be the output. So you have an input and an output. The output being the department chair's work product or the unit supervisors, shall include the following statement on a watermark: COVID-19 pandemic year. All right. Now, interestingly enough, you guys agreed to that in your proposal of November 30th. That was your proposal. You can see it down below here. Each page of a faculty member's annual evaluation from the department chair supervisor shall include the following statement on a watermark: COVID-19 pandemic year. Now, in your latest proposal in December, you've backed away from not only that, but also other things. It reads, COVID statement: faculty may, if they desire, watermark any items submitted in their annual evaluation portfolio, annual report of activities with the watermark COVID-19 pandemic. So basically in your proposal, you're missing the part about requiring it to be placed in each page of the portfolio report, the input, because it's a may, if they desire, watermark any items, which we don't know if that refers to the form or if that refers to additional items. And you're missing the output portion of that. In other words, your proposal doesn't speak to the actual work product of the chair once they commence an evaluation. And a piece of information that I want to put on the table here is that for purposes of promotion and tenure, only the output moves forward. In other words, 5 years down the road, when the faculty member goes up for promotion or tenure, or they go up for promotion, they do not see what you are covering in terms of that annual evaluation portfolio or annual report. So the effort that you've created here is actually going to be obscured by the other portions of the contract. So there's a lot of questions surrounding this particular proposal, the least of which is what has happened between November 30th and now that you would actually go backwards in helping faculty and protecting them from the exigencies of the pandemic?
Well, some faculty may not want to go through the process of having their input watermarked. It's their input, and they should have control over what they're submitting, and whether it has a watermark on it or not. We have articulated today that our position for the output is that we would have notice language on the document. Now, if we're open to discussing watermarks on the output annual evaluation, but we, after considering this process, believe that notice language is probably more effective in attaining what our concerns are for the faculty, which is to inform individuals in the future that are looking at these documents that this was a document that may have been, this is an evaluation in a context that may have been adversely impacted by COVID-19. Instead of just saying a COVID-19 pandemic year, I think what we're proposing goes a step further.
Well, do you disagree that the COVID-19 pandemic year is a true statement? If it appeared on a chair's evaluation, would that be an untrue statement for the year of this year?
Well,
It would not be an untrue
I
statement.
don't, well, if you, maybe I'm being too much of a lawyer, but I actually think that there isn't a single COVID-19 pandemic year, that the pandemic began in the spring of 2020 and is still with us, and maybe with us into 21 or 22. So
Okay,
I think that it's better to identify by notice that the evaluation was completed in an environment that where it may have been adversely impacted by the pandemic.
so I guess Mike, somehow between the last time we met and now, I'm just incredibly confused with your arguments. The period of evaluation that we are speaking to in this particular document covers from summer of 2020 to spring of 2021, June. Are you actually saying that you don't think that that would be considered a COVID-19 pandemic year for purposes of a watermark?
A year in which COVID-19 existed,
No,
correct?
look, the statement's right there, COVID-19 pandemic year.
I don't think there's a single COVID-19 pandemic year, if you ask me that. No, and it's not an argument, it's an observation that's not in dispute. There's not a single COVID-19 pandemic year, whether you look at academic year or calendar year. The pandemic started in the spring of 2020. It's still ongoing, and quite frankly, it could be going on for into the summer, into the fall, who knows?
And we would,
Yeah,
and we would rebargain that
impacts,
position
and
at that time.
I would bet that you would come to the table and probably identify impacts that continue from the spring of 2020 forward into the next academic year. And it may be the case or it may not be. But I think I think COVID-19 pandemic year doesn't do the trick. I think what we're suggesting is a statement that the evaluation of the faculty member may have been impacted by the pandemic. We think that is the statement that gives notice to someone in the future that this evaluation may have been affected and should be interpreted in that context.
Mike, I'm flabbergasted. We had good faith bargaining and we had intellectual conversations about things leading up to this point. I'm perplexed. I mean, you're mounting arguments that frankly to me make no sense.
I'm not arguing about anything. I'm stating that our position is that we believe that it is more effective to put notice language on the evaluation letter or document.
Would it not be more effective to include a watermark on top of that and a chair's statement on top of that? If your true intent is to mitigate the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on faculty as it relates to research, teaching, and service, why would it not be more effective to include more information? Your argument is that including less information in a more limited fashion is better for faculty. And I'm here to tell you that is not going to be well received by not only the faculty, but the larger public, because it makes no sense. If that's your position, that less is more, which I'm hearing you, because you have all of these arguments about maybe the chair won't follow it, maybe there'll be slippage, maybe it's just too much detail. You're saying it's too much information. And as a result of that, somehow that's supposed to protect faculty. I don't think we're really coming at this from the same principle. Our principle has always been, as impact bargaining is, to negotiate in a way and in good faith to mitigate, reduce, alleviate the impacts that have are all there for everyone to see. The fact that we've went to remote instruction and teaching, the fact that we have had money taken from the faculty that otherwise would have available to them to engage in research, the fact that service obligations are very difficult to engage in now. Something has changed. I don't know if it's a change in the administration. I don't know if it's a change in the bargaining team. I don't know if it's a change in your particular posture, Mike, but this is a different conversation. And I'd like to get through the last couple of issues and then caucus. We have Bob Greenlaw coming. I understand he's on the Zoom call right now, and we'll get to that. Let's move and at least get on the record some of the offerings that you have as it relates to why you are changing from your earlier position. Let me talk about these real quickly. We had proposed that each department unit shall develop a format, including headings in each area of their assigned responsibilities for inclusion of information regarding the impacts in their annual evaluation portfolio and the annual report of activity. Our idea here is consistent with our principle of more information is better. You have taken that clause out. Much of this proposal is actually already in the CBA. And I'm not sure, but I think I understand now, you probably think that more information is actually bad. Do you have an explanation for why you pulled that out and you don't want to include headings in the portfolio or report that faculty put together when they explain how their performance has been impacted?
We believe that the language that we have provided to you is fully capturing the process and protects the faculty. And we don't think that sentence is necessary. We have picked up what you had asked for before, which is each department chair's unit supervisor shall be provided documentable guidance from the administration on how to take into account the impact of the COVID pandemic. And we're going to do that. Each portfolio will contain an opportunity for the faculty member to address the impact of the COVID pandemic on the performance of their assigned responsibilities. We have also added that a faculty member shall have the option to include a self-rating in the annual evaluation portfolio or report of activities. So we think that is going to do the trick. We think our language is going to allow for this process to take into account any adverse impacts of the pandemic on the faculty for the purpose of evaluation.
You think it'll do the trick?
Yeah.
Yeah. Less information.
Picking up, it's not less.
It is. You're not promoting headings, Mike. Let's just put it right out there. You are not allowing the headings to be placed in that document. That's less. Just say it. It's fine. It's less. You're saying less information is better for whatever reason you have.
Unnecessary information is better. Yeah. Unnecessary information is better left out.
Heading that would allow faculty members to include information is, in your opinion, unnecessary?
It's unnecessary.
Do you have any evidence to support that? Any experts that would tell you that that is an unnecessary feature?
That's the opinion of our team.
Who on your team holds that opinion?
I'm not going to disclose what we talk about in caucus. I wouldn't ask you to do that either.
Does anybody on the team want to bolster Mike's argument that less information is better?
I don't think they need to. It isn't less information is better. It's unnecessary information and unnecessary requirements of the MOU are not good practice as far as we're concerned. We're comfortable with what we have given to you, which is expanded to include several points that you asked to have included.
Mike,
What's funny
as
to
I
me
shared
is,
with you,
what I think is funny to me is
okay, what's
that
funny, Mike?
is every how we are willing from session to session to make concessions and to add language that you propose. But when we say we don't think that's necessary to be included in the MOU, or we disagree with something, or we say it a different way, we are attacked. We don't see where you're making concessions to getting to an MOU that we're all comfortable with. And so I think it's unfortunate that that's how your team is approaching this.
Mike,
I think what
we're simply
doing
asking you to
is we're
explain your
creating a
position.
document that provides protection to the faculty, and a lot of protection to the faculty, and protections that you have asked for that we've added. And I think there's a lack of appreciation for what we have endeavored to do with this document. It
A lack of
isn't that
appreciation.
every sentence and word that you put into a MOU has to remain in the MOU, that we cannot phrase something differently. And so that's how I feel about all of this. I think our MOU is great. I think we should sign it and move forward. With regard to the notice issue that I've clarified today, for 3, I think we're there. Why are we hanging up on something like that?
Well, Mike, we're hanging up on something like that because obviously the Council of Chairs thinks it's important.
To develop.
Obviously, we're hanging up on that.
Minutes.
If I could finish, Mike, obviously we're hanging up because the Council of Chairs thought it was important enough in November 6th to mount a draft and push it forward for inclusion. They teach here, they work here, they know what's going on. You're not teaching here. You are an outside lawyer contracted here, and you are located in Tallahassee. I tend to put more emphasis on what they are saying should be included in what is necessary. Having said that, I didn't know we were supposed to express appreciation to you. If that's the case, thank you, Mike, for all the kind things you've done. But let's continue on. And the last area that I want to share with you is the discussion here of, for that matter, let's just move off of these two. We are close to the time when Mr. Greenlaw was going to appear, and I'd like to caucus with our group very shortly here and then come back at 3:05. I have to say, Mike, something has changed. I don't know what it is. We'll determine over time, hopefully, what that is, but we have taken a big step backwards. We were intended on trying to reach an agreement to protect faculty by the inclusion of more information. Somehow you have determined, and you won't tell us how, that information and more information is unnecessary, or you simply disagree with the reality of the world in terms of it being a year of COVID-19 or what have you. And I for the life of me, I don't understand it. But I respect your position. You've shared it with us. And for now, let's caucus and return at 3:05 if that's convenient for you.
We can do that. That'd be great.
Okay, great. And Mr. Greenlaw will be available at that time?
I believe so.
All right.
He's standing
right.
by, so.
All right, thank you. And we'll see you at 3:05. And if we stretch to 3:10, don't hold it against me. Coordinator, it's our understanding you're the lead point person in coordinating the university's response to the pandemic. We'd like to talk about 3 areas. Number 1, we'd like to talk about the standard that the university is applying to calibrate whether or not they would go to all remote learning. We'd like to have a conversation about testing and tracing. And we'd also like to have a conversation about efforts towards obtaining vaccinations for the faculty and other personnel. So we have some information that we'll use to put on the table, and then we can talk through it. Typically, Bob, we start our sessions for bargaining kind of with this events on the ground slide, and Maria Ottolano typically assembles these and takes us through it. So I'll turn it over to Maria real quickly. Maria?
Thanks, Greg. So hello, everybody. Just to give a little bit of a recap, since it's been a while since we showed our events on the ground, we were happy to see that UNF was still counting and reporting cases even when most of the university for winter break. So we've updated our graph accordingly. So as you can see, UNF saw a strong surge of reported and confirmed COVID-19 cases in the new year. We had 63 cases that first week when we came back from winter break after campus was reopened. And while we had fewer cases reported last week, 32 cases, it's still more than what we're used to seeing here on campus. And it's a startling trend, honestly. On Tuesday of this week, it was announced that the United States, have surpassed 400,000 deaths due to COVID-19. And on that same day, local news from around Duval County was reporting that we had the worst day in the entire pandemic with 40 confirmed deaths in one single day. So we continue to be alarmed by the events on the ground regarding potential risks due to COVID-19 on campus, locally, and et cetera.
Thank you, Maria. And so, I mean, if I average those cases in the first 2 weeks of the, if we average those cases the first 2 weeks of the semester, I get around 47.5 or so. And that's actually more than we've experienced in any 1 week since we've been tracking this back in August. And I do note the 400,000 mark that was surpassed. And locally here, the unfortunate single day record of deaths. We have some additional information we'd like to get on the table regarding this. James, you did some additional digging here to get a more closer look at Duval County and what's going on in our immediate vicinity. Can you take it from here?
Sure, Greg. And thanks, Bob, for joining us today. As you know, the COVID Act Now website breaks down some of these facts and statistics a little more closely. And in fact, COVID Act Now is used by the by several cities and states on their COVID travel warnings. And so just a few, this was updated yesterday. And I just wanted to point to a couple of the statistics here. The first one is the daily new cases. So over the last week, Duval County has averaged 513 new confirmed cases per day. And if this trend continued for the next year, this would translate to approximately 190,000 cases and an estimated 940,000 infections, which would be 98% of the Duval County population. The positive test rate is alarming, and that a relatively high percentage, 13.3% of the COVID tests were positive, which indicates that testing in Duval County is limited and that most cases can go undetected. It's hard to know how fast COVID's actually spreading, and there's a risk of being surprised by another wave of disease. We're currently in the third wave, according to the website, and we're hoping that we don't get to a fourth wave, which is especially concerning with the current ICU capacity. And Duval County is reported having 417 ICU beds. And of those 417, 243 are filled by non-COVID patients and 120 are filled by COVID patients. So the 362 out of those 417 beds are filled. This suggests that hospitals cannot absorb yet another wave without substantial surge capacity.
And James, some of these numbers have actually, I mean, we were seeing in the first week of school that the daily number of new cases per 100,000 was almost double that. I think it was over 100. And the positivity test rate during that early period when we were opening for the spring semester was, I think, over 20%. You had
Yeah.
included this particular chart as well. Did you want to highlight that, James?
Yeah, I just kind of read the statistics on the ICU beds, and that's but to kind of segue into what we might hear from you, Bob, is kind of where UNF is with the quarantine, the number of rooms used for quarantine, or the number of beds that are used for isolation. I think that's something that we're curious about today.
Okay, is that your first question? How do we stand in Building W with our quarantines and isolation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is basically if the ICU capacity here in the town is reaching a critical level, what's the university's response? And I think the larger question is, given these events on the ground, our previous conversation with you was that you would look at those events on the ground and make a determination as to whether or not that the university would continue to be fully, to have face-to-face courses, of which 16 to 18% of our faculty have, and up to 50% have some interactions with students. So we're kind of looking at that standard. What is it going to take, and what, in your mind, have we not reached that threshold yet as it relates to protecting faculty?
Well, number one, the safest place to be in Duval County always looks to me like on the UNF campus, because our numbers, the state percent today, I get this every day, was 8.54, and they've just gone under 10. So they've been over 10. Duval County, very high, as you say. We have been extremely successful at UNF in keeping this under control. We've had no instances of an exposure that resulted in an infection in our classrooms due to direct interaction. We do contact tracing, and so everybody knows what that is. When somebody reports they have a positive case, we find out where they got it, where they were they exposed. And we find out in every case, it's been family events, dinner with friends. At UNF, we're very strict about wearing masks, as you know. It's all about wearing masks and social distancing. So where we've had students test positive, and you had 2 faculty self-report last semester that they were exposed by a student in their classroom, and both of those faculty members tested negative. So we call that a low-risk exposure, because if you have a mask on and if you're socially distanced, and keep in mind this is an aerosol, so we've been very safe on UNF's campus. Last semester, we had about 364 cases. Off the top of my head, I say about it, so don't hold me, could be 365, but it was in that neighborhood. And when we looked at universities our size around the United States, they were all in the 2,000 range. So the fact that we have been very, very consistent with our messaging, with masking. And one of the things we've been very big on is that our student peers go out and tell people to mask up. So you've seen a lot of publicity on it. Student government's been very helpful in sending people out. You know, if I go out and I tell one of the students, well, you ought to put your mask on, well, this old guy's a pain in the neck, what's he, but when students tell them, hey, help us out, put your mask on. So we've had a lot of success with our masking, social distancing, hand sanitizing. We have had very, very successful semester at UNF so far as our exposures went. Where we're at right now, where you saw this jump, is absolutely expected after the Christmas holidays. And you probably realize that we mandated, it's the first time we mandated every returning dorm student be tested. So our numbers were higher. We did a lot more testing right after that holiday break. So that's pretty expected. But our COVID dorm, I call it the COVID dorm. It's Building W. That means if we have a dorm student and we're going to isolate or quarantine them, and you understand isolation is a positive result, and quarantine is somebody who's been in touch with somebody who's a positive result. So like a roommate or something like that, they go into quarantine. We were up to about 40 students in Building W when we first started. Today we were down to 5 or 6. So they complete their 10 days, and we're not refilling those, although we're still doing testing, and we continue to do testing. And that's another question you want to ask, so I'll defer that till you're ready. But we have been very pleased with where we've ended up on the UNF campus so far as not having infections within the classroom environment. and being able to contact trace. And by the way, we did have over 40 faculty test positive since March. Okay. So one of the big messages I'd like to convey, which I saw John White helped me out with an email a week or so ago. We got a lot of questions about that after he did on testing. If you are positive, one of you, and you don't know it, and you come onto the campus and because you have no symptoms and you're wearing a mask and socially distanced, you're probably not exposing anybody. But the thing that worries me is, can you expose other staff when you go to the restroom or wherever you are? We'd really like you to be tested on a regular basis. We've made it very easy to be tested. And by the way, we're all supposed to use the Safe Ospreys app. And I don't know if you know this, but we've included the testing schedule on the Safe Ospreys app. So if you go into it and you go to the COVID resources, you're going to see the testing hours. We even do drive-through testing 2 days a week. And I got caught up on that the other day. Somebody said to me, no, you weren't there. Weather permitting. Okay, it was too cold in the morning to put the nurses out and do the testing, but weather permitting, we have outdoor testing as well as the indoor testing in that lot. We've put parking spaces. I heard from some faculty and students that they didn't have a parking permit because they were not normally on campus and they had to pay for a daily permit just to come on and get tested. So we've put half a dozen spaces in lot 10 there by building W. So you don't need to have a parking permit. You can stop in and get tested quickly. But I think testing is a big part of this, and we make it available at no charge. And there's no waiting, and it's not painful. I've had it done to me about 8 times so far, and I can tell you I haven't had any tears shed at any of it. This misnomer that they shove a Q-tip way up your nose until it hurts is not true. It's a simple swab. We do it outside, so you're not exposed to anybody. We're very careful about it. So I'm kind of mixing a couple of answers all together here, but go ahead and ask me some more questions and I'll be happy to answer.
So Bob, you mentioned that 40 faculty had tested positive. I'm assuming those faculty are being listed under employees on the weekly reports.
Right, that was the whole since March.
If I could
Okay.
interject here, Bob. So since March, we've had 42 faculty self-report, not that they've tested positive. It could be symptoms or that they've been exposed to another and they're not exhibiting symptoms, or that maybe they've been tested and they tested positive. So not a total of 40 since March have tested positive, just 40 self-reports from faculty members.
Okay, that's a good point. I've got Carrie's email here and I missed that in the sentence when I was reading it real quickly, but yes. So, confirmed, we have not had any. We do contact tracing, as I said. We haven't had any reports of anybody being exposed on campus in our learning environments. So I think that's a big plus. And when we get students exposed, we find out, yeah, they went out and had dinner with 4 or 5 people and took their masks off. And you notice one of the things I get asked constantly, now it's spring, people are fed up with this. They don't like it anymore. They're not having fun. Not that we ever did, but they want to do new things. They want to go out and have more activities. And can we do this? And can we do that on campus? I get that on a regular basis. And I'm telling people that it's as dangerous or more dangerous now than it was before. We have a new variant that's highly contagious, that this is not the time to relax our standards. And when we talk about eating or drinking, when you see this going on, we make sure we tell them you're allowed to take your mask off eating or drinking while stationary. That doesn't mean walking around campus with a cup of coffee in your hand and your mask off. So eating, drinking while stationary and socially distant. You'll notice activities that are being planned that we have approved. That's the case. They have to stay seated or stationary while they're eating or drinking, socially distant, have to wear masks. We're putting more emphasis than ever on masks. I got a couple reports that people saw a couple people without masks the other day. So that's really important. COVID's not tricky. We heard this way back in the beginning from the CDC. It's an aerosol virus, wear a mask, socially distant, and sanitize your hands. That's what it takes, okay? And every time we find out somebody has a positive case and we contact trace, they can go back and tell us, well, we had guests at the house, Uncle Johnny came over and we weren't masked, and then he turned out positive and now I'm positive. So I honestly said to somebody the other day, they were talking about coming on campus and the environment they were in off campus in the county was much more dangerous than coming on our campus and obeying our 4 pillars of safety. And you all know what they are.
Thank you for that. who will make the decision? I mean, we're entering the darkest phase of this pandemic, and the projections are that we will see, particularly with the new variant, that the multiplier and the deaths are going to greatly exceed any projections we've seen so far. Who will make the determination if and when the time comes as to whether or not we would move to fully remote instruction
Well, we
and
would,
remote work?
yeah, we have a committee that consists of some of our administration. We have a couple of vice presidents on our COVID task force. We meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week. So that task force advises the senior administration. We keep them apprised of the numbers on a constant basis and where we stand. So they would have all the information to make that decision should that become necessary. But I expect to see our numbers start to go down on campus now that we're over this holiday push and we get back to more normal business where people are staying on campus.
And what would it look like? What would it need to look like from your task force to give advice to the administration to go to full remote?
Well, I think that's up to the administration to decide. We just give them the information, but certainly if we were asked for recommendations, you know, it would be on UNF. I would be concerned about what happens on UNF's campus. If we started having exposures on campus for some reason, and I can't for the life of me think of what that would be, because as long as people are following our recommendations, I have seen no evidence that we have a threatening environment on the UNF campus. So we all live in Duval County, or, you know, we may live in the surrounding area, but we certainly go through it all the time. And we all live in Florida. So the outside area is dangerous, but I will tell you that I have traveled myself. Of course, I'm very careful when I travel. But as I go around Florida, I see bars with people 3 and 4 deep, no masks. We were told when they reopened the bars, and I get that. I get our economy. I get that it's a tourist economy. I get all that necessary to keep people employed and working and our economy in shape as best we can. But we were told the bars would be masked and people would have to wear a mask at any time they weren't drinking. We were told the bartenders would all wear masks. I don't see any of that. I see people piled in these places. I see people in restaurants being careless, you know, sitting right next to each other in large groups. That's what's hurting Florida. We just are not doing the safety standards we've been told to. UNF campus, I think we do them. You know, somebody would have to show me where we're not being safe on the campus. So I think that in our environment, I would be very surprised to see that we have infections start to come in from some activities that we're pursuing on campus. We're very careful with athletics. Coach Moon, it's amazing how careful he is, how much testing we do of our athletes, how careful we are. They had me go to the first men's basketball game and I sat and watched all night. I could not come up with anything to say there was an unsafe act. I mean, you know, people do everything under the sun. They get a box of popcorn and sit with their mask off all night. But there were ushers there maintaining everything. The safety was perfect. Everything we've done, I think, has been very careful. I think our campus is a very safe place.
And what would be the factors that your task force would rely upon if and when you were to make a recommendation to go fully remote? Is there a list of 5?
I think the biggest thing would be that our safety on campus was failing, that something's happening on campus. You know, I worry about on campus. Duval County has started to come down a little. Florida started to come down, but we had that real big peak after the holidays. Yet our campus stayed safe. Our student rate was below 4% of positives, and all that was attributed to the holidays. We've gotten out of that now. We see the percentages coming more in line. So, you know, if we had things of unsafe acts on campus that were causing us a problem, that we saw exposures, that we couldn't identify those as being off campus, I just don't see how it's going to happen with the safety precautions, with the seating. We would love to have more students in classrooms on campus. There's no question about it. We don't have the space to do it. We make sure that everything is socially distant in those classrooms. I've had faculty people contact me and ask me for help with stickers on you know, chairs and make sure everything's in place in their classrooms. But we make sure that we're doing this in a safe fashion. And I could tell you it has worked. And I wouldn't be able to tell you that last March. I would say I was hoping it's going to work, but I can tell you in history, it has worked and it has served us well. And I'm very comfortable where we're at. I'd have to see a tremendous difference before I would even think about, recommending that we are unsafe on campus.
So for example, if testing were to, if the annual, the weekly reports of the voluntary testing were to all of a sudden jump to, a couple hundred students, is that something that would pass your threshold of safety failing on campus?
Well, if we had a big fraternity party that caused that, that would be a different item. That,
Yeah.
if our contact tracing started to show that we were in trouble because of conducting business on the campus, that would be a big issue. But honestly, when you look at Duval County and you look at Florida, I'm very serious when I say when I'm on campus, I feel safer than when I'm in Publix, frankly. And Publix has a masking regulation, but who hasn't been in Lowe's or Home Depot or somewhere and seen people walk right through and they have the regulation, but so does Duval County, but they're not wearing masks. I will say I appreciate the county has maintained their mask mandate while some counties have dropped it. Why you would say drop it is beyond me. I mean, it'd be like you suggesting, why don't we drop the mask mandate at UNF? That's something you'd need analysis from a psychiatrist. I don't see people not wearing masks. I know it was a big political issue. I'm hoping now that'll quiet down some, because certainly the new administration is very up on mandating masks. They've mandated it in federal buildings and everything. So things like that will help us in the general population. But our campus is a safe haven in Duval County, in my opinion.
So it's fair to say that testing is a very important source of information that would drive any recommendation.
Well, absolutely, but the testing and then the contact tracing, I think you've got a couple.
Okay, tracing.
I can't imagine going to 200 student positives, but we've seen nothing like that happening. We would be investigating how is that happening and what's going on. We are really on top of it. You don't see all the things I do, but our fraternities and sororities, they had a meeting with me the other day, the Greek life people, and wanted to know what can we do safe. And like I say, people would like to do more and more and have other activities. It's not as much fun, think about it. You're in a fraternity or a sorority and you go out on an activity and you all want to get together and take a picture smiling and put it on social media. Everybody masked up is not very impressive, 6 feet apart, but that's where we're at. So we've had excellent cooperation. And if we don't have cooperation, look at the student conduct numbers. They have brought discipline to bear on people that violated the rules, that weren't wearing masks, that had a party, that did whatever. We've been very strict about it and it's paid off. I honestly believe, all the universities in Florida aren't where we are, let's face it. You look at some of the parties that have gone on and the tremendous amount of positives. Again, I don't see that other universities are having positives in their classrooms, but I do see that they've had a lot more problems than UNF. We've had really good cooperation. It's a great team between the faculty, the students, the employees, the staff. Everybody's been really good about it. So I don't see it. Frankly, it would have to be an extreme case of something that I don't foresee.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's shift gears to testing and tracing. That seems to be an important criteria that's driving any decision that would be made if we were to get into a situation where that would need to be something to consider. And I know, Bess, you had some data that you wanted to share and that will help us set up the conversation. So I'll go down here to the first piece of information. Bess, you want to help us out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a little bit of kind of research on what some of the other SUSs were doing with their safety and COVID protocols. And I wasn't quite sure where UNF was on some of them. So I have a few questions on where we were based upon what some of the other SUSs were doing, and then kind of some questions on where we were. So the first one I looked at was USF. They were really strong on saying what percentage of the staff were going to be coming back on campus. And I didn't know if UNF had a policy about what percentage of the staff were going to be on campus at any given time.
Gary, I'll refer to you on that.
Thanks, Bob.
You know, Bess, I'm sorry, Carrie, maybe we should just, it might be useful to reserve this to the testing and
Oh,
the
just the
tracing.
testing. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
let's do that.
Yeah. So
Given
one
time.
question that so one of the things that USF has done is they have random testing pools of students, faculty, and staff where they're required to go to testing, and that's coupled with the contact tracing. So so part of it is if a student has been exposed, then they get tested, but also they're doing kind of random testing of students and faculty and staff, coupled with environmental screening of surface areas around campus to more closely monitor the campus community. One question that I'm thinking about with our numbers is it's self-report, right? So, and with a large commuter campus, lots of students coming in from outside, how sure are we of our numbers being low? Like how do we know that there aren't lots of students who have had COVID or been exposed to COVID that aren't reporting that to UNF?
Well, you use the word, I think, mandated testing. I've been told at UNF that mandating is a dirty word. And we were told, Justin, I see, is on the call. Justin told me in the beginning, you can't mandate something like testing to somebody unless it's going to make a difference, okay? And when we were testing somebody and it would take us 2 or 3 days to get a result, that crossed that threshold that it wouldn't make a big difference. But now we have that 15-minute test. So we mandated, and Justin was totally on board with it. We mandated, as I said, all our returning dorm students to be tested because that 15-minute made the difference, okay? They were not back in the dorm exposing their neighbors and their mates and the roommates and all that. So that having a 15-minute result, they had to sit in the testing center till we got the 15-minute result, and that made a difference. But we don't mandate, we strongly encourage. We have free testing available. With almost no wait. I was told this morning the longest anybody's ever waited in our testing facility was 15 minutes. And I have never seen that myself. So very rarely do they have a wait. It's available. We have the hours posted. We do anything we can to help people get tested, encourage it. But we don't mandate it. I don't think the faculty wants us to mandate them to come in for testing. At least that's what I've always heard. You'd have to tell me otherwise. But we do have students that are commuters come in for testing. They come in anytime they have concern. There's a lot of our students that are concerned about this, and we make a point of telling them, don't expose your family. So, you know, a student lives at home with his grandparents and his parents and, you know, isn't sure whether he may have been exposed. They'll come in and be tested to be sure because they don't want to take it home. Your faculty doesn't want to take it home. And we're happy if you have a situation where you think you may have been exposed, you know, gee, I forgot to wear my mask. I went in Lowe's. I get out in the car and I think, oh my gosh, how do I do that? So you can come over and get tested anytime. It's you know, within our hours, but we make it very available and you can get tested as often as you see fit. So we do get students all the time come in. And what we're doing now is we're mandating our dorm students have to come back in by building. We do representative sampling. Okay. So to me, it's very important that we do representative sampling. We bring in some people from each of the buildings. So we know that the flats, we bring in 100 people this week. We bring in 100 people from one of our other housing units. And by that, we get to see a percentage. How many positives are we getting? You know, is it something that in that area of the dorms are we concerned? Bob Boyle, you know, our resident life director, is very strict with his RAs and people that are supervising the dorms. They're very good on masking and not having any type of activity unsafe going on.
So we're doing random testing pools of resident students.
We do random testing for anybody we can get a hold of.
Right. Well, yeah. So, but it sounds like you're doing that really specifically of our residents by dorms, which is good to hear. I didn't know that we were doing that. That's amazing. I am worried then again about the large percentage of, you know, commuter students we have at UNF. And do you have a sense of the percentage of our students who've been tested?
I don't, but I can tell you that you know, I would be concerned with commuting students. I would be concerned with commuting faculty. I would be concerned with commuting employees. I'm concerned with all of you. So
absolutely,
we need to get tested. That's the name of the game. We have it available. And certainly the sampling, everybody that comes in isn't positive. There's a small rate if you think about it. A lot
Yeah,
of
of
people come in
course.
just to be sure. So, it's only 2-point-some% that actually are positive that come in to be tested. So I think we get a good sampling across the board. But I would be more than happy to see more people come and get tested. There's no question. It's good for all of us.
Yeah, I guess that's one of our questions is kind of who's being you want to look at the next group.
Yeah, sure.
Greg?
Best also and maybe you're going to get to this, but there's the type of testing that's in testing that would, I guess it tests the water and sewage that's coming out of a
Yeah,
dorm.
the environmental screening. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like USF is testing surfaces of the dorms, and other universities across the United States are testing the water and other environmental factors to look for the virus. Is UNF able to do any of that kind of testing as well to look for places?
We looked into that. Dan Endicott, our Director of Health and Safety, looked into it with Wallace Harris, our facilities director. And they didn't think it was overly feasible or very worthwhile to pursue based on the results we would get, what was the cost versus result, and how good that would do us. We did look into it, yes.
Okay.
Something else we found out, I probably would be murdered for saying this, Justin, to get off the line, that other universities have told us, we have these meetings with all the other universities all the time, and people have said, oh yeah, we're testing everybody, we're doing this, we're doing that. And then the more we look into it, it's, well, not exactly. That not exactly is a big word. So I'm sure your study here is accurate, but we've had a lot of people tell us they're doing a lot of things, but we find out it's one building they're testing, or one area they're testing, or one thing they're testing. It's not as widespread and as effective as they tend to say. And one of the other things we look at is our air handling on campus. Dan Endicott looks at our air handling, and we're meeting or exceeding CDC standards in our air handling in our campus buildings.
I will say I feel pretty confident about USF because my daughter's there and I've witnessed all of these things personally. Right. But we can look at.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying in general, I have found a few times.
I totally agree with what people might put on their website versus what they're doing in person. Let's look at FAUs. I think that's the next one, Greg.
There we go.
They were doing. As opposed to that mandatory, they were doing voluntary random testing. And I think the point here is just kind of that there might be people who it doesn't occur to them that they might need to be tested or they should be tested, but they're kind of pulling groups of commuter students in addition, saying, you're in this group and we think you should be tested as part of that, as part of their testing. They're not requiring those people, but they're kind of strongly encouraging specific groups of people targeted as well as part of their COVID efforts. And then another thing that they've done is they've continued access to flu shots, knowing that will also help prevent the spread of disease in the campus. I know we had our regular flu shots available in the fall, but it wasn't widely announced, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, again, keeping the health and safety of our campus community at the forefront.
We had a very hard time getting flu shots. We were trying to get more and do more, and we had a hard time securing them. But so far as strongly encouraging people to get tested, Carrie, back me up on this. Carrie's on our team in the morning. We have constantly strongly encouraged faculty, employees, I always say employees, faculty, staff, students to get tested and try to make it available. We constantly put that message out. So that's exactly what we're doing. Voluntary random testing is exactly it.
I think it's a little different than putting out a broad message to everyone saying get tested. This is saying, okay, well, this group of students is going to be, we're going to send out a message to, a random group of the psych majors and a random group and say, we targeted you and saying you've been identified for random testing at the university, 100 students, and we would like you to be tested this week as part of our COVID, protocols.
I'm
Yeah, I
happy to
think,
take that suggestion forward. I don't have any problem with that. That sounds good. Well, I'll take that suggestion forward and we'll pass that over to Eric Bruder and see if we can get that going.
And if I could
Yeah.
just, give a little bit more information that was discussed in the Healthy Campus Blueprint group. And so that's kind of the second phase after, if we start seeing a spike in one particular area, like a lot of students from psychology are testing positive, that would be, the method that we would take is send out that invite to say, hey, look, we're strongly recommending that the group of you, students and faculty, staff that work in these buildings or this area, we really want you to go get tested. Now that does incite a little bit of panic, right? Like, why were we singled out? Why did we get, requested to go get testing and not the entire campus? But we haven't gotten, the numbers just haven't risen to, require that yet, or have us prompt to say, look, this is really starting to be an emerging issue in this area. We need to, do more focused testing of this group. So that's definitely, we've thought about that. It just hasn't, gotten to that level for us yet.
Yeah, so that sounds like targeted. That sounds like targeted testing for a group based upon some numbers. And I guess my point is that we don't really know a lot about. What we know is people who voluntarily said, "I'm going to go get tested." We know those people, but we don't know from a bigger sample of people. And I think that that's maybe what we're not capturing, or that maybe the people who aren't thinking about getting tested. And so a voluntary random testing situation might help us know if the psychology students are perhaps experiencing a spike, but none of them had gotten tested on campus.
Yeah, we would see that in our testing. But one thing I'd like to tell you, and I did a survey myself, the SUS emergency managers meet every other week, okay? And as you know, we do notifications. Anytime somebody tests positive, we notify the faculty, we notify the students that are in that class. We were the only university that was doing that. Everybody else was shocked that we were doing that because it takes a bit of an effort to do it. But the interesting thing is when we make those notifications, we always strongly recommend that they get tested. We tell them it's a low risk exposure, watch your health, but go get tested. So we've been, I think, very good with that, because I when we went to all the effort to do it, I was a little upset at the fact that I was being told to do that, and I wasn't volunteering it because it takes a big effort to make it happen with staff. But our student health staff is tightly done right now. Imagine doing all their normal health care plus COVID, and we needed to do that. But the decision was, yes, we're going to notify every time we have a case. So we were doing that, and we're unique in that as far as I've seen, unless somebody else picked it up later. But last semester when I took the survey, we were the only ones in the SUS that were doing all that notifying. So yeah, I think if we do watch for that. So if we got a spike in positives with a certain group, we would know it. And not
again, you would only know it if they get tested on campus. So I just want to keep reiterating that. And I know that we're encouraging students to get tested on campus, and that we hope that that's where they're getting tested. We hope that they're self-reporting it to us. But that's, again, our data is only as good as our data.
Well, when they self-report, we do contact trace. So
no, I understand. No, I understand that. But I'm just saying that, like, we have a big commuter campus. There's plenty of other places for them to get tested, not on campus. Right. And there's plenty of reasons why a student might be asymptomatic and never know that they have COVID. So what I want to say is that increasing efforts for testing and voluntary random testing is another way that we would get more people tested. Because I don't think that we can assume that the people who are getting tested now, or the positive hits that we have now on the cases in UNF represent the whole of every case at UNF.
Well, my track record with the faculty asking for something and me trying to make it happen has been pretty good. So I'm willing to say that I will certainly take this back, and we'll take a look at it and see what we can do.
Excellent. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Bess. We've only got a few minutes here, but I did want to give Claudia a moment and Bob to talk about the vaccinations. Obviously, this is important to all of us, top of the mind, given the recent news and what have you. But Claudia, I know you had some information put on the table, and then we'll ask Bob to respond.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thanks, Bob, for coming. We know, and you mentioned that we have faculty when they're exposed, or you would contact them on low risk exposures for campus. We also know that educators have been moved from that essential worker category. And so a question for you, and it's just that we're super curious to know whether any form of advocacy have been going on or put forward to have educators vaccinated. We talk about risk, we talk about 40 faculty being tested positive. Is there anything that you're doing or your group's doing to kind of nudge them forward, to bring us forward as essential to be vaccinated and not wait as a group of 65 and older, 75 and older, that kind of a thing? Bring us forward since we're exposed so daily?
Yeah, that's vaccination is something I'm working on constantly right now. So that's a real great question. I'm happy to talk about. We have meetings with the presidents and the BOG on a regular basis, and we have brought up to the BOG and the Surgeon General meeting with the BOG that we feel very strongly about this. And I'm not sure you know, but the regulations for vaccine come from the federal government. They distribute it to the state. And for there on, the state makes the decision. So right now, you know, our governor has said 65 plus and healthcare workers. We're trying to get them to, as more vaccine becomes available. The problem is not the distribution of the vaccine, it's the supply. I'm on a call every day with the state where we talk about it. And the big issue is that just the 65 plus, we have 4.3 million in Florida. And we've vaccinated about 1.3 million so far in 6 weeks. Well, do the math. You know, I mean, that's going to take us 3 or 4 months just to do the 65 plus, and then we hope they'll open up other categories. But we're very concerned with our faculty, and matter of fact, we have carries. I believe it's over 300 employees over 65. Is that not correct? The county asked us for that information. We gave it to them, and we're working really hard with our county and Duval County to be able to establish a pod at UNF. I had to go get my vaccination with the city, and you all know what that's about. So I was eligible, but I had to go to the city to get it. And I would much rather have it at UNF. So if we could get our hands on several hundred doses right now, we would open a pod. We've already got a plan to do it in the field house. We've got I just came from that meeting before this meeting. That's why I wasn't available at 2 o'clock. But we're working very hard to get our everything in a row, ducks in a row, to do that on an efficient basis. And we would like to do vaccinations at UNF as the governor allows. So even if we had the vaccine today, we could only give it to faculty over 65, and we could give it to our healthcare workers. They gave us 100 doses a week ago for our frontline healthcare workers, and they had to go to a city site and receive their vaccinations. But we're trying to put it in. We've had conversations with the Department of Health as late as this morning. I was talking to the people who are in charge of the distribution to let them know that they have problems with appointments. You're going to see this clean up a lot. Duval County has been given a call center where people can make appointments. You're going to see an online way to make appointments. This business of, you know, oh, just show up is not good. And the birth date thing, you know, we have people standing in line for hours. I would not want to see our faculty standing in line somewhere for hours because they open this up to every teacher in the state of Florida. So just imagine what that would be. We're trying really hard and advocating to get it at UNF. And we're certainly calling to their attention that we have a population here that is just like the teachers in the school system that they talk about so often, and that our faculty needs to be opened up for the ability to have vaccine when it's available. Now, we've all heard that the new administration is planning on making more available. And what I was told on a call this morning is that's going to be a hard thing to do until we get a couple more manufacturers coming online, which they expect in the next month or so. And then it may open up that we see millions of doses. Florida right now is only getting a little over 260,000 doses a week. And when you divide that by 67 counties, and some of them go to Publix, because Publix in some areas, they're getting 30,000 or so, and the long-term care facilities are getting another 40,000. So what's left for everybody else is not huge numbers, but we are very cognizant of the vaccine. We're working very hard to try to get it. And I would love to see it being done by our people on our campus, and we make it easy. We'd have appointments for you guys if they let us do it, when they let us do it. I hope they do. And I say it's a big if because they're going to start Walmart, Winn-Dixie. You know, I'm trying to convince them that the right place to do UNF campus, UNF family in general, is on our campus, and we're fully prepared to do it. We have plenty of help in our, you know, we have the Brooks College of Health. I don't have to tell you, and we have a lot of people who can administer vaccination, and we have a good place to do it. We did our testing. Remember, I told you we did our testing. I know it's 4 o'clock. I'll finish, but we tested over 1,600 students in 1 week in that same field house. So we've gone through quantities of people. We know how to set it up. We know how to do it efficiently. And yes, you're on my absolute hot button of the day is to get vaccinations available at UNF and to try to get our faculty included in that as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Bob, we have reached the 4 o'clock hour, and I don't want to keep you longer, but I appreciate you going through and talking about the standards, the testing, the tracing, and vaccinations. We greatly appreciate your service here at UNF, and I know the faculty respect the task force work. Our questionings today are really more along the lines of information so that we can understand what is going on, and you've been able to provide us with that kind of understanding. So thank you on the behalf of our team. Thank you very much. Mike, I don't know if
for
you're
an opportunity like this, I really do appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much, Bob. And I think we've lost Mike, but today was an interesting day to the team on the BOT side. We are going to take back and digest your position as it relates to protecting faculty in this important time. Share that with the faculty so they understand where you're coming from. And hopefully we can meet at a future date and resolve some of the gaps in our positions with an effort towards protecting faculty. So thank you very much, and thanks to everybody who attended today. On behalf of UFF UNF, we'll see you in the future. Thank you.